All right, everybody, welcome to Theory Underground. If you were paying attention to a recent upload, the one called The Plan, Introduction to Sociology and Critical Social Theory with David McKerracher, that's me. Well, that episode, which went public 3 days ago on both the podcast, the main podcast, as well as the YouTube channel, but which was initially recorded for my subscribers for the ongoing research seminar that I do with my wife, Anne Snellgrove McKerracher. Well, then you'll know that I talked a little bit about how I'm teaching Sociology 101. And there's a lot of stuff in Sociology 101 that I don't get time to go much deeper into. And I was saying that if you want the deep end and the 101 level, well, then you can become a Theory Underground Snellgrove McKerracher Synthesis Seminar subscriber, a monthly subscriber, and then you get that access to the ongoing research as well as the backlog of all the stuff. Okay, well, what I was getting at is that I'm giving these lectures on campus. And, well, if you are interested in what those lectures are like, what my teaching style is like, lecturing on sociological concepts, thinkers, and theory, especially the ways that I combine estranged labor, time-energy theory, class conflict, Marx, the PMC, and all of that stuff. Like, if you want to see how all of that is coming together for people who are new to this kind of thing, well, if you're interested in all of that, I'm making this available for you. This is part 1 of 2 lectures that I will be making public. The ones that I'm doing for my own class, I'm not going to make public anytime soon because, well, I would have to release all of them because it's like a contextual thing. But what's special about what you're about to hear is that this was given as a guest lecture in my wife's sociological communication course. Now, she has 2 sections to that course, and yesterday I gave a lecture to the other course, to the other section of this course, and then today I gave this lecture to this section of that course. The reason why this matters is because I'm going to refer to it because these 2 lectures are meant to complement one another. The one that I did yesterday, I'll be releasing in a couple of days, so stay tuned for that. Go ahead and listen to this one if you like it. If you're interested in some of the stuff that I'm referring to that I don't end up unpacking here, well, then stick around. Make sure to subscribe and keep your eye out because the other episode will be coming soon. These 2 go hand in hand. They are the culmination of over 10 years of research into so many different fields and not just my master's thesis, but also everything else that I've been up to through Theory Underground and before that. So yeah, I really want you to get a sense for it. And then if you like it, become a subscriber to the ongoing research seminar, because at the end of the day, I feel free at the university, unlike most academics, because if for whatever reason I was to be fired, it wouldn't really be that big of a deal because I do have my ongoing research seminar. But that only really is possible thanks to my subscribers. And so, yes, think about becoming one. All right? That's the idea. Also, stick around until the end of the video if you want to hear more about Theory Underground. And with that, let's get to it. All right, everybody. So I'm going to start, obviously, by taking out the earpiece from my ear in case anybody else is also doing that. I always like to leave it in until the last moment because I do like to listen to things. But also, I like to make clear that I am taking it out because it is technically rude to leave it in. I know in this course you're going to get a lot of digital literacy along with your critical media theory, and that's awesome. I think Anne is, from what I've seen, doing a fantastic job. If you also agree with me, put your hands together and say thank you to Anne. So I did a lecture yesterday for the other section of this class. Hi. And so Anne has another class, right? It's yesterday, or it's on, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 p.m. It's also, it's the same basic content, right? But it's a different kind of vibe because of the different time of day. And I was like, well, I don't like sticking to a script. I don't want to just repeat myself.
but I do want to hit on all the same points. But I want to hit on the same points in a different way. Not just because it's a different vibe and I'm going to try to, read the room and whatever. No, but also because I left out a very important part of the lecture yesterday. And so I kind of want to make it so that today's recording, which is why I'm going to hold my phone, I'm recording. Today's recording is going to be a complement for yesterday's. Even if you don't listen to it, you don't have to, but the link will be available so you can listen to the two together. They'll complement each other. And so if you're interested in these topics that I'll be bringing up today, then you'll want to check out the other lecture. Okay, so hands up if you've heard of conflict theory so far. Yeah, most of you, yeah? Okay. Now, in the Norton textbooks, which are, for sociology, the most important or sort of most influential textbooks on sociology, for a long time, I think until a very recent edition, there were three main theories of sociology, and they were called Marxism, functionalism, and symbolic interactionism. And this is Anthony Giddens and company. They're the most important sociologists, at least in terms of reach, in terms of influence. They stopped calling it Marxism recently and started calling it conflict theory. And the reason makes sense, because conflict theory is not just something Marx invented, and it's not just something Marx theorized, and it kind of misconstrues things to talk about it as Marxism, because Marxism is, generally speaking, like a political doctrine. It's almost like a religious political doctrine. It's an entire worldview, right? It's an accident that I'm wearing red today, and I'm talking about Marx. But like red and Marx kind of go hand in hand. Hands up if you know why. Does anyone know why Marx is controversial or associated with the color red? Really? Only one person? Are you for real? You know too. You know? Well, why would you say? Communism. Was that what you were going to say? Anyone else? Was anyone else thinking that? But you were like, I don't know. It's a lot of people in the room who didn't get it. But okay, for the 20th century, the worst century in human history, in terms of people killed by tyrannical regimes, and in terms of two world wars, or you could almost say an entire century-long European civil war, which is another way of thinking about those two world wars, it was about communism. And it's almost like that's been erased from everybody's memories. Now, I'm not a communist. I don't identify as a communist. I also don't think that my worldview is fundamentally communist, but I do think that there is something in Marx worth thinking about. But Marxism is different from Marx. So that's first thing. An ism is a worldview, whereas Marx is up here on the top left, the far left, right? Marx is a great thinker in terms of his reach, his influence, the breadth and depth of his thinking, his multi-volume work, Das Kapital in German, for the capital. Well, what is the capital, and why was it so influential on all of these other people, even though most of these other people aren't Marxists? Most of these other people disagree with him, but they still read him. They still felt like it's necessary to engage with his work. Why? Well, for Durkheim and Weber, those two right beside him, these are the three great social thinkers. Durkheim and Weber are definitely not Marxists. Okay, I'm not a great social thinker, I don't think, not yet. I'd like to be someday. I think it's a worthwhile goal if you are a big geek for these kinds of things. But we have to set realistic expectations, right? Which means 20 to 40 years studying the field and just immersing yourself in it. I don't expect most of you are trying to do that. Maybe that's not your goal. Maybe you've got other things you want to do in life, right? So my goal then is to just give you a little piece of the pie, just a little welcome mat into the world, so you kind of get a sense for it, for what it's all about. So I said all this stuff about Marxism and communism just to kind of separate Marx from that. But at the same time, I want to talk about why Marxists still try to keep alive Marx in this specific political way. And why, if you're going to be a social thinker, even if you're not a great social thinker, insofar as you think about the social, you want to think, okay, what was Marx up to, and why does that matter? And how is Marxism separate from other kinds of conflict theory? If you get that by the end of today, you'll be forever a better thinker, I think, when it comes to thinking about anything social. When people critique media today, the tendency is to focus on the implicit or explicit message, right? And one of the implicit messages that the left likes to critique is representation or recognition. Sometimes it gets down into redistribution. The 3 R's. From the 1970s through the 1990s, there was a hot debate in the world of social theory. It involved people like Nancy Fraser and Judith Butler and Jody Dean and Martha Nussbaum, 4 awesome ladies who hold different political positions and are ultimately arguing with one another about the importance of these different terms. And so Nancy Fraser ends up writing about representation, recognition, and redistribution. I think her approach is kind of like, hey, we actually need all 3, even though her tendency is to argue against approaches that prioritize representation. I'll bring it all back around at the end of this lecture, if I can remember, make sure to remind me if I forget, to these 3 R's. But just to kind of like give you a sort of basic sense for what they are, and so that you are able to pay attention to the discourse other people are engaging in when they start talking about a movie or talking about, some TV show and they're critiquing it from the left or the right. Start paying attention. Are they talking about representation? Are they talking about recognition? Or are they talking about redistribution? Okay? And then the big thing is, what do all 3 of those miss that was a bigger goal prior to the 20th century, a bigger goal of social change movements? We're going to cover all of that. But at the very top here, we have representation. And so, can you read what it says to the right of representation there? What is the word there? Okay, and who do you think that's about? Yes. She's still the VP, I guess. But current presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Okay, and what's the one below that? Ariel. Okay, who do you think Ariel is? No guess?
Not sure.
Okay. You've got red hair. You have to know who Ariel is.
Is it the new adaptation of the movie?
Yes, we're talking about the new adaptation of The Little Mermaid, right? She went from being a white woman with red hair to being, or I guess she wasn't a white woman the whole time. She was a part fish, I guess. But then she becomes a human at some point, right? White woman, red hair. What's significant about the new adaptation? She's black, right? That's recognition or representation, kind of arguable which one of those 2 it is. Okay, does that make sense? People want to see, or at least people say, or at least some people say, I want to see more black people. And so Disney says, okay, we'll just redo The Little Mermaid, make her black. Easy, right? And then obviously some people, very critical of that, go, it wasn't a good movie in the first place. Like but you kind of made it worse by not making a story about a black woman. Like you could have made a story about a black woman, but instead you took this other movie, recycled it, and simply swapped out the color of the person playing the role. So no, you don't get applause from us, right? So there's this whole debate going on. Did anybody love that movie? Is there anybody here who was like, no, it was actually amazing, inspiring, I loved it? Okay, I don't think a lot of people really liked it. But it's not because of the color of Ariel. It's because it's just like most of these Disney remakes. It's kind of like it's a cash cow, it's a throwaway. They're not taking it very seriously, right? So, but of course people get angry about it because you're supposed to like it. because she's black. Like, that's kind of the idea. And so people are like, no, I'm not racist just because I don't like this new Little Mermaid. I don't think I would have liked it even if she was white. But also, stop trying to ride some kind of money train or hype train or controversy train on this, this race issue that you guys are creating, instead of just making a good movie about a black woman. Come on, give us a real heroine instead of like this recycled trash. That's kind of this argument. If anyone was paying attention, if you haven't, if you look online, you'll find various positions from the left and the right arguing about this. But the general position on the left is, yeah, it was kind of an opportunistic attempt for them to stir up some controversy. They didn't pay a real artist to write a real new movie or come up with a real new story, right? Okay, what's the bottom though? For redistribution, I have reparations. Now the reason I put reparations, Kamala, and Ariel all on the board should be obvious if you've been paying attention for the last 4 years. The reparations discourse is about the descendants of former slaves, right? If your ancestors were slaves, there is an argument that you should get reparations because you've been set back. That would be redistribution, right? I could have used lots of other examples of redistribution. I could have talked about universal basic income. I could have talked about the stimulus checks that some people got back in 2020 because of COVID. I could have talked about other kinds of welfare. Those are all forms of government redistribution that says some people have a lot of money, other people, they're having a real hard time right now. We're going to go ahead and tax those richer people and give some of that money to those poorer people, right? And that's the idea of redistribution. So the argument is, if you have one person over here saying, no, what matters is redistribution. People need money. People are suffering right now. Then you have this next person say, no, what we need is more recognition. Little black girls growing up in this country need to see people like them in movies so they feel recognized and they feel like they have real opportunities. And then you have the next person saying, look, the real issue is one of representation. Black people will not feel represented unless they have a black leader. And so what we need is someone representing them in a position of power. So that's the difference between recognition and representation. Now, obviously, in both of those cases, we can imagine a little black kid growing up sees Ariel and goes, hey, look, it's me. And then they see Kamala as president, they go, hey, look, it's me, right? So there's a sense for recognition in both of these cases. But when it's just a movie, we'll say that's just recognition. And when it's representation, we're going to talk about like people in positions of power who look like, in this case, a marginalized person. Or if you're not a marginalized person, you say, looks like, I want someone who looks like me anyway. Okay, but I didn't have to go with a racialized example. I could have talked about a gendered example. I could have talked about a sexed example. I could have talked about disability. We don't see enough people with wheelchairs in movies is something that some people might say, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so now you know that between the 1970s and the 1990s, this was a big debate in academia. I think at this point, your average leftist or left-ish or even just Democrat kind of person is going to say, oh, some bundle of all three. I want representation. I want something better than just recycled Little Mermaid. I want original content made that does feature black people. And then I also would like to see a competent, charismatic person of color in a position of leadership, and preferably have an agenda that makes them different than the old guy with dementia, right? Right now, most people are not very happy because they don't feel like that's really going on. Who knows? That's debatable. These are all debates. It's all stuff that most of you probably avoid, right? So hands up if you just generally avoid all three and you don't talk about these things with your friends. Hands up if you don't talk about these things with your friends. Okay, so lots of people don't talk about these things with their friends. How many of you who just raise your hands, though, you do tune into it sometimes online? You'll check something out on the topic. Okay, so some of you who don't talk about it with your friends, you will look into it online. Most of you who don't look into it also, you don't talk about it with your friends. You also don't follow that kind of content on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or podcasts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? which means you're probably part of the 50% of Americans who don't really feel represented by either side. 50% of Americans don't vote at all. Okay? And then a significant portion of the left and the right also don't get involved in the primaries and kind of just vote to make their families happy. Or they're single issue voters, right? Like, I don't feel strongly about any of the things that they argue about. I don't have the time and the energy to get to the bottom of any of this stuff. And so what am I going to do? I'll just kind of say, well, at the end of the day, I like free speech, or I like guns, or I like my freedom to choose. Or you have like these different single issues that people will take up, right? Well, if that's the case, then can we say, okay, if most of you are not tuning in to arguments over representation, recognition, or redistribution, and if most Americans aren't voting, and if most Americans don't feel significantly represented by either side, then is it accurate to say there's basically two kinds of people, left versus right? I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads. Does anyone want to argue that there is basically two kinds of people, left and right? No one wants to argue that?
Hello, beautiful listener. I see you. Just kidding. I can't. But I have to interrupt this just really quick to make my own advertisement, my very own. The one that says subscribing, liking, commenting, it actually makes a really big difference. So even if you're just on the free side, shout out to you. Thanks for doing it. Make sure to subscribe and all that. Especially people on the podcast, make sure to say something nice in the reviews. It actually really helps. And I need reviews on every platform, all right? Because I just hate to say it, it matters, you know? I try not to chase the almighty algorithm, but also I don't want to have all of this beautiful content go to waste. And so I'm trying to walk a fine line between quality and quantity. And I come out way heavier on the side of quality, as you can obviously see we do here. But come on, let's push that subscribe button, you know? Let's smash that like button, you know? Like, teach the algorithm what you actually care about, all right? And then maybe it'll show it to other people. That's great. All right, let's get back to it.
Okay, so no one's going to say that there's basically two kinds of people, left versus right. Okay, and I think that that is a general American sentiment. The only people who tend to disagree are the people so deep into the lore and drama of politics today, the spectacle. Those people, they go, well, if you're not voting for my side, you're enabling the other side and you're responsible. It's your fault, right? You're not talking to your friends about this, it's your fault. You're not watching this stuff on all your free time online, it's your fault. I'm here to tell you something very controversial. It's not your fault. But also, your role, if you succeed in your college career and you actually get some kind of a career after college, your role serves the reproduction of the current society in a way that keeps things focused on this superficial left versus right distinction. Even if you don't care about it, even if you don't pay attention to it, even if you don't vote for it. I'm not saying you're responsible, but your role as a credentialed professional or manager, hopefully, I pray every one of you will be making six-figure salaries and be able to, instead of being worried about where you'll be renting or if you'll only have one house someday, you know, I hope that all of you will be talking about where you want your vacation home to be and you'll have six figures. I hope so. Statistics say the overwhelming majority of you, that won't be easy, right? It's not looking good for our generations, right? Home ownership, it's not exactly something that looks that realistic on our horizon of possibilities, which is over here on this whiteboard. I talked about this a lot yesterday, but I was talking about it mostly in terms of home ownership. Horizon of possibilities. Think about it. Does that make sense? Without any explanation for me, does it make sense to you what this would mean, a horizon of possibilities? Anyone confused about it? Yeah? Okay. So what is a horizon? I look out the window. I see some trees and smoke on the horizon. right? So when you look out ahead, there's a horizon, even at the end of the room. That's technically I don't know if you'd call the wall the horizon, but the point is that when you look out into a great distance, what you see standing out along the skyline, that's a horizon. So we're using this as like a sort of metaphor, a horizon of possibilities. So let's come up with a couple of examples. What's a very unrealistic possibility? It's still a possibility, but it's unrealistic on your own horizon of possibilities. What's a very unrealistic possibility for you? Becoming president is very unrealistic, considering the fact that no state university graduate has ever been president, ever, right? And so they want to act like we're in the same boat as people going to Harvard and Yale and Princeton, Cambridge and Oxford, but it's a little bit less likely, right? We're hopefully going to be six-figure earning professionals or managers or business owners, but it's less likely still that we would be president. And I was already saying it's unlikely that all of us get to own homes in the next 10 years at least, right? It's unlikely because of how expensive they have gotten compared to how much cheaper they were for our parents. Also the lower purchasing value of our dollar, right? These things add up. What's a more realistic possibility for one of you? What's something that's very realistic? If you said, I want to do that, you could do it today. What's an example of something that's a realistic possibility on your horizon? Bowling? Bowling. You could go bowling. I think with your student ID and a few dollars, you can go bowling at the Sub right now. You can walk out. Come on. Go out. Go. No, I'm just kidding. So, making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's pretty realistic, even if you don't have the ingredients at your house, right? Like you can make a PB&J. Even if you've never made food before, you've only ordered takeout your whole life, you could still probably figure out how to make a PB&J. So I'll just put the PB&J over here as very possible. And this is the symbol for possible in modal logic. It's a diamond. Okay? So it's very, very possible that you could make a P, B, and J. Less likely, president. Okay. Not impossible, though. If any of you ever get in there, make sure to remember us. Remember us over here, us lowly professors at the State University. We'd love to be in your cabinet. No, I'm just kidding. We wouldn't. Okay. The horizon of possibilities. Now that makes sense, right? So there's all kinds of things that are likely and less likely on your horizon of possibilities. Then we have the relations of production and the mode of production. We'll get into that in a little bit. Okay? At the level of mode of production, we're talking about a kind of social change that is not currently being argued about by Democrats or Republicans or any of our elected representatives or any of the virtually any of the influencers who argue about representation versus recognition versus redistribution. So we'll talk about the mode of production and the analysis that prioritizes it as being fundamental to large-scale structural, I'm sorry, that's terrible handwriting, structural change. You'll just have to believe me that that's what that says. That's an R, believe it or not. We'll save that as a little teaser, though. I have time. I have time. Believe it or not, I have time. Now, I talked about this a lot yesterday. If you're very interested in it, then you can always listen to that. I'll just touch on it briefly here for the people who were there yesterday or the people who are going to listen to that. This will be a sort of refresher. But I had society is this versus that. These are two big circles on the board. On the one on the left, I'm going to write inside of it one big happy family. I'll do a little peace sign. I'll do a little heart. Yeah, we got a smiley face in here. One big happy family. Society is, but I changed it to society as. Using the word as is a little bit more intellectually sophisticated than just saying is. When you say is, you're saying it is fundamentally this thing. But as a social theorist, using your sociological imagination, you want to move between thinking about society as this and then as that. At any given moment when you're thinking about society, the chances are you're either thinking about it as we the people, one big happy family, we're all in this together, or you're thinking about, are we going to have a civil war? Holy cow, people are really at each other's throats. I don't even want to go home for Thanksgiving. It's intense. I try to stay offline. I don't want to see those arguments. I don't think that they're going to go anywhere. The majority of you don't think they're going to go anywhere, or at least you've disinvested your time and your energy and your attention from following it online, right? So on this side, on the right side, we have not one big happy family, we have conflict. And remember at the beginning I said that until recent editions of the Norton Introduction to Sociology textbook by Anthony Giddens and company, there was this term being used, Marxism, and it got swapped out for conflict theory. It became more fashionable to talk about it as conflict theory because many versions of conflict theory are just simply not Marxist. The big reason why is because after the failures of the 20th century and 2 world wars, it's not as popular to talk about large-scale structural change. Large-scale structural change at the base, at the mode of production in society. That's what the word here would be, production. I'll write it on the board. So it's relations of production, mode of production. The relations of production are the relationships between the workers, between the managers, between the professionals, between the owning class, the controlling class, the have-nothings, the workers, right? We're talking about the relations of people. And even if we think about like anti-Mexican immigration and anti-Mexican sentiments, or we think of sort of racist caricatures or stereotypes of Mexicans via representation and recognition in our society, we're mostly talking about something that is based in the relations of production, because it turns out that our society has a dirty little secret that they don't want you to think about most of the time, and that is that most of our food, being so cheap, relies on masses of Mexican immigrants, mostly undocumented, working in, quote unquote, our farms. Now, I don't believe in the one big happy family version of society, and so I'm not going to say our farms. They're not, I have nothing to do with these farms except that this is where I get my food from, but I have no control or ownership over these farms, so don't put me in that category of us. It's not our farms. And why did that happen? Well, it actually has to do with a bill or some like legal policy put through in the 90s called NAFTA. And I'm not going to get too deep into it, but basically it made it so that the farmers in Mexico could no longer compete. We were producing corn and soy and wheat on such a massive scale, and then we were subsidizing that from the 1970s all the way through the 1990s with tax dollars, so that the farmers could go into insane amounts of debt to the government and the banks so that they could have giant operations. They're no longer farmers. They're bureaucrats who oversee massive, expensive machinery. And all of that's subsidized by our tax dollars. And then a giant surplus, which is to say extra amount of food, was created. And what was done with that food? We started dumping it into other economies, especially the Mexican economy, and we made it so that they couldn't sell their food to other countries, bankrupting thousands of farmers, some of whom who took their own lives, lots of whom took their own lives, and American farmers who couldn't see a way forward on their horizon of possibilities without going into massive amounts to these banks and the government. A lot of them took their own lives as well. It's really dark. It's a dark period for American and Mexican agriculture. And so all these farms go out of business in Mexico. And where do they have to go work? Well, there's only one real option. And we're not going to give you legal status, which means that you don't have protections, which means that we can pay you as little as we want to, which means that we can overwork you and underpay you, and your kids don't get to go to school, and then we can make stereotypes about you and laugh about you. But at least they're hardworking. Like they're a bunch of little minions from Despicable Me, right? That's the sort of ruling class or professional and managerial sort of class idea of a good worker, is the minions. Oh, they're cute, and I don't even understand what they say. It's just, it's so funny, ha ha ha. And we don't have to think about it. We don't have to think about those are human beings with rich horizons of possibility if the society was structured differently, right? So we think about the racial stereotypes, we think about the racial possibilities, the representation, the recognition, but at bottom, this would be Marx's point here. What do you see over your head here? I feel like bad because I wrote it right over your head. Base and mode of production. Okay, so the mode of production here is the thing that defines those relations of production, the ways that people relate to one another in a society that is divided, that is conflicted, that has tensions, that has antagonisms, that has war even, right? Now, what are some of the schisms in society? Non-Marxist schisms. Just, you know, when we expand conflict theory, what are some examples of groups that are opposed in their interests in society?
The class system.
The class system. And that's exactly where we're going. But what are issues people tend to focus on in the government or in politics today? Issues like these ones. Men versus what? Thank you. Men versus women. Black versus white. Able-bodied versus not. Neurotypical versus neurodivergent. Yeah, what are you thinking?
Pro-life and pro-choice.
Pro-life and pro-choice, right? Which from one perspective is framed as women who know what their interests are versus women who don't know what their interests are or are betraying their own interests. And then from the other standpoint, women who care about life versus baby killers, right? Like this is a pretty fundamental divide in our society, and it is one that people become single issue voters over, right? Yeah. So the left and the right politically, they tend to focus on issues about like, well, what's on the horizon of possibilities of that farmer? Or what's on the horizon of possibilities for that little black girl who doesn't see herself in media except in corny Disney recycled movies? The Marxian point is most of those other antagonisms, though they are real, are based in the mode of production. And the mode of production is where you have the relations of production come out. Okay? So that all should, hopefully, make enough sense. But what do we mean by the mode of production? Well, here's an extreme example. If everything was done by automated AI to free up as much of our time and energy as possible so that we could spend our time making music together and, I don't know, skiing or whatever we want to do, that would be a very different mode of production. And it would change our horizon of possibilities, right? Well, also a society that has slavery, literal slavery. That would be a different mode of production, wouldn't it? Well, that mode of production obviously defines the relationships in that society. So we want to think about sociological communication. People talking, people writing messages to one another, people making TikToks or blog posts or writing books, people reading books, people watching TikToks, producers and creators of content. And the way that the medium changes the message across all of these different technologies, right? Fascinating stuff. But who's communicating? Who's communicating? What kinds of people have the opportunities to communicate? Are the opportunities of the undocumented Mexican worker going to be the same in terms of communicating? Probably not. Probably they don't have very good access to an English education either, much less the time, the energy, and the attention to develop their literacy in it. So who's doing the communicating? And if we get back to the class question, isn't it going to be true that there are people in certain roles who are supposed to speak, people in certain roles who are supposed to think, people in certain roles who represent, who recognize, who redistribute? There's certain people that are supposed to be in those roles, and then there's other kinds of people, and they're not supposed to be in those roles. They're not supposed to make decisions. They're supposed to follow orders. The communication is supposed to be one-directional. If your parents were working class, the chances are they either explicitly or implicitly got the message society doesn't care about their opinions very much. Why? Well, because they don't belong to the professionals and managers, the credentialed college elite, right? Which is hopefully what we're all going to become. But if you want to be a good social theorist or think about the social and not have your ideas be garbage, if you want your ideas to not be trash, if you want your ideas to not be like for the rest of your life, stupid caricatures of other people's hand-me-down ideas, then you have to learn to think through these contradictions, at least a little bit. I'm not saying you have to obsess over it, but you do want to start thinking, okay, why is every solution that people offer just a little bit of representation, recognition, or redistribution from the left or the right, and never any kind of positive, large-scale structural change that genuinely changes the relations of production or sets people up for different kinds of possibilities, like more realistic possibilities, to be able to spend time and energy with their friends, their family, their community, their band, to be able to practice instruments and learn new languages and travel the world. I don't see any of the arguments in politics today fundamentally changing my horizon of possibilities because it changes the relationship, the relations of production, because it changes the mode of production, right? So that's what Marx was trying to get at, and maybe he failed in various ways, but it's worth thinking about, right? And so on the left side up here, or at the top, I guess, I'll just put bourgeoisie, right? It's that word. Maybe you're familiar with calling things bougie when they're expensive or nice. Ooh, that's bougie. Well, it comes from this weird-looking word that looks like bourgeoisie, but it's bourgeoisie, right? And it means not just ruling class, not just the people who are rich, not just the people who have everything, but it also means the people who own and control. The people who own and control. Versus, down here for Marx, it was called the proletariat. And the proletariat's not just poor people, it's not just homeless people, it's not just undocumented workers, it's not just slaves or serfs. No, the proletariat was the industrial proletariat, right? Because at the time that he's writing in the 1840s through 60s, he's thinking about we have this giant boom of a population and people are competing for lower and lower wages, working longer and longer hours. You have little kids working in factories. You have women not able to spend any time with those kids. And the dads are sitting at home drinking themselves to death because they actually don't have any real roles in society, much less realistic possibilities other than drinking themselves to death, right? Because they've been replaced by machines that are now being overseen by their children. or their wives. That was the situation. It's a crazy situation. And Frederick Engels, Marx's friend, said that these children are growing up like wild weeds. Children who are growing up like wild weeds do not have real possibilities, do they? That's a pretty extreme example. It comes from pretty extreme times. Life's not like that anymore, right? Like things are different now, right? Like, yeah, things might be a little hard. Maybe your parents had a difficult time sometimes making ends meet, right? Or maybe they were able to make ends meet, but they weren't able to have real relationships with their kids, right? But it's not as hard as it was for Oliver Twist or that dude from Les Miserables who stole the loaf of bread and then, I don't know if anyone's seen Les Miserables. Okay, but you've probably seen something from that period, right? It's London. Smog in the sky. There's no sunlight in the middle of the day. Factories everywhere. Shit and piss and water and mud in the streets and lots of poor people running around in rags while some rich people are in stagecoaches peeking out at the masses. The rabble, right? Like, that's kind of the image we get from that time. My point is this. We live in very different times, don't we? Or do we? Is it really that different? Or have we just changed? My other cup of coffee, I got to get that out. Or have we just changed the relations of production and the mode of production enough to make us feel like things have changed? Let's start with my coffee in my hand. Where did it come from, you think? Some guesses. Let's get some guesses going. China, what did you say? Japan?
Your bag.
Oh, my bag, yeah. Well, to be very literal, yes, my bag. Guatemala, Peru, very likely places to be getting my coffee from. I don't know. Colombia, I don't know. I don't keep up with where my things come from. I like to just, like I think most of us, remain pretty ignorant of it, right? But that's why I have in every session of Sociology 101, the course that I'm teaching this semester, this on the overhead, because I don't use PowerPoints, but I have this image that I spent a lot of time putting together. This image is made up of like 50 different images that I overlaid and I did the graphic design for it, okay? Okay, so what is going on here? Well, in the very, very background, it's a sort of canvas of production. You can see some factories on the right, and you can see some professional spaces with people in suits on the left if you look really closely. They're mostly covered up. Obviously, there's a bunch of thinkers up there, great social theorists from the last 200 years. Ultimately, people that I'm committed to trying to understand as best as I can. But also, you see the US military. You see Belizean sugarcane farmers. You see a trucker holding some crying kids. You see the truck in the background. Why are the kids crying, you think? Because he's leaving again. That's really hard on a little kid. There's a point when you're a little kid when you want your parents around. Then there's a point later where maybe you don't want them around as much, but you still probably need them. But if you weren't around to build a relationship with them, and now you don't have trust and a way of working with them, now when you're a teenager, it's, yeah, good luck, right? What about the top right? What do you think she's picking, that little girl? It looks like some kind of bright red fruit, but it turns out that's coffee beans. So apparently coffee beans come off the vine like a bright red fruit. Crazy. I don't know. There's probably different varieties. But that's crazy. We don't think about it as bright red fruit because when it comes to us, it's either ground up, and it's black usually, or it comes in these dried beans, which is to say it's been processed. Now, when we're thinking about the mode of production, we have to start with extraction, and the extraction industries are mostly farming and mining. right? So we got farming and mining as forms of extraction. That little girl is farming. That would count as extraction because it's the acquisition of what? Resources, right? Natural resources. But we don't consume them as bright red little fruits, do we? What do we consume them as? Something that's been processed. And so process, when we're thinking about political economy, that gets called manufacture, right? So maybe they do get processed in China. They get grown in Guatemala, picked by this little girl, sent off to China to get manufactured. Or maybe they come to some factory in the United States. Because there are still factories in the United States, believe it or not. Right? And all of this is to make a point. We think that the relations of production are very different because we grow up with the sun, usually, mostly, coming through during the daytime. So we're not in Charles Dickens' world. We're not in 1800s London. And we don't see it all concentrated. We don't see all that poverty concentrated. In fact, in Boise, there would be a huge ghetto if we put all of the trailer parks in one place. But instead, they're all hidden away. This little one over here, this little one over here. Let's put that one behind an old Shopko. Let's put that one behind the strip mall, right? They're hidden away. Everything gets hidden away. It's the same basic system of production and global extraction and manufacture, and then also what the trucker is doing, distribution, which is to say supply chains, right? Supply chains became very, very important during COVID because you had ships backing up at the ports. They weren't able to get goods places. So people were like not sure certain resources would show up, and then it was really messing up the stock market. That's all part of distribution. And then, of course, at the very end of the line, you have where we spend most of our lives doing consumption. I really ran out of space there. Consumption. It's consumption. Extraction, manufacture, distribution, consumption. Well, in the very extreme example I used where AI and automation is used to free people up from menial, degrading tasks and free us up so that we were able to spend more time making music and dancing and telling stories or whatever it is that people like to do. But I always use those three examples because most people, except for very jaded products of specialization, modern people like ourselves, most people throughout human history were participants in the creation of music, right? Everyone was in the band, and everyone knew the dances, right? It wasn't just like some people on some TikTok craze knowing how to do some dance. It was like, no, everyone shares community dances, right? There was no Tinder. It was, let's go to the dance tonight, right? And then you just meet people and you vibe with people. You don't have all these awkward encounters and these weird dynamics that come out of something like Tinder, right? I'm not trying to nostalgize the past. I'm trying to say that humans, generally speaking, like to tell stories, like to hear stories, like to make art, like to participate in art. And now it's like, oh, I'll go to the show and hold my phone and make a video of this other person making music, and I don't even know the dance moves, right? Like this is this division. It's a kind of division that Durkheim's going to talk about a lot, right? Well, if you did change up the society so people could spend more time making and participating in art and going skiing with their families, or spending time with their parents instead of their dad having to leave for 2 months out of the year or every 6 months, you're talking about changing the mode of production, the base of society, the way that everything is organized. You're talking about changing the way we extract things, changing the way we manufacture things, changing the way we distribute things, and ultimately, hopefully still getting to consume those things, right? But it would be different because it would be directed towards us having more time energy, not towards us spending our entire lives having our time energy wasted. And so in my final close here with my life, I guess I have probably, what, 7 minutes? Yeah. Something like that? 5 to 7? Okay. Does everybody remember the concept of time energy? Yeah? Time energy. It's a concept made to be relatable and to give a name to something that we all lack. It's not a made up thing. It's a real thing. It's just a word that we needed to go with something that we know exists that we don't have. And that thing that exists that most of us don't have is large energy infused repeatable blocks. We're talking about large blocks of energy infused repeatable time reliably between us. And now, maybe not between us, like literally, but between you and your family, between you and your friends, between you and your colleagues, between you and the community that you want to create for if you want to become a violin virtuoso, but people don't have the time energy to genuinely enjoy a violin virtuoso. If they're ignorant of the culture of violin in the first place, then you could spend 10,000 hours mastering it. Are they really going to be able to appreciate it? This is why having the time energy for yourself is not sufficient. It's not something that comes from inside of you. You get inspiration from other people. Arguably, we only really care about other things because other people have in some way inspired us to care about other things. This idea that you're just like self-motivated to care about something is kind of crazy. Well, then marketing wouldn't exist. Influencers wouldn't exist. Teachers wouldn't exist, right? You need other people. But what if those people are always stressed out? What if those people only have time without energy? Because that's the alternative to large energy-infused repeatable blocks of time reliably between us. The alternative is time without energy, or energy without, let's do it like that, without repeatable large blocks of time. Now the fact is every day you have time to do things. Every day you have time. But you don't have large energy infused repeatable blocks of time reliably between you and your friends, right? Especially as students, you experience that, right? More than anyone else except for like blue collar workers and slaves in the third world. You know what it's like to not have time energy. And time energy is symbolized with a lowercase e and a line through it for the t, and it's a unified whole. Because if you have one but not the other, it's worthless. If you have nothing but fragmented time, worthless. Well, the point is that time energy, I'll just do the symbol on this side. Time energy, I'll put it underneath manufacture. I'll put it under extraction. I'll put it under distribution. I'll even put it under consumption. Our time energy in society, due to our current mode of production, is fractured. So I'm going to go ahead and just cross out the time energy. Cross out the time energy. Why is it crossed out? Instead of time energy, what we have is a whole society that sees us as labor power, potential to work, potential to be on call for a boss. And our entire schooling system has, and I talk about this way more yesterday, our entire schooling system is set up to make us feel like we genuinely deserve the six-figure salary and calling the shots over other people, or like we don't deserve $7.25 an hour or more than $10 an hour or whatever. I don't deserve to own a home because I was bad at school, right? Your most formative years of your life, being taught some of the coolest subject matters in the world, but how was it taught? What was the implicit message? What was the invisible syllabus of the schooling system? You either deserve or you don't deserve. But ultimately, whether you deserve or not, whether you feel deserving or not, you're seen as labor power, as either a professional or a manager. So I just put PMC up here, professional managerial class. Not part of the bourgeoisie, not part of the owners, but you are probably more like part of the controllers. You are, through your college degree, we are all trying to become this. Something that'll make, hopefully something like $200,000+ per year. Preferably way more than that, right? Versus this lower class. But you're still labor power. And this reading that you'll all have, that Anna will be talking about in a moment here, is called Estranged Labor. It's about Marx. And Marx cares about changing the mode of production because he doesn't just care about representation, recognition, or redistribution. He cares about the actual change of the mode of production for the sake of a positive, large-scale structural change. And maybe his diagnosis of what's wrong with society is off in some ways. And therefore his solution, communism, probably not the right solution, right? Maybe. But we got to think about it. And if he doesn't have a good solution for large-scale structural change, well, maybe we still need one. Maybe that's a good demand. Instead of just representation, recognition, or redistribution, we should be saying, we want solutions on the table for large-scale structural change so that these little kids in Africa don't have to spend their entire lives mining cobalt for our phones and PlayStations, so that they can have some real possibilities on their horizon too. And so that this dad doesn't have to leave his kids, and so that this little girl doesn't have to spend her life picking coffee beans. And so that I don't have to spend my life in the workplace as a professional, as a manager, or as an undeserving, lowly worker, right? That's what we mean by large-scale structural change. And so in Estranged Labor, think about this term he'll be using, life activity, as the key. Think of life activity as time energy. Pay very close attention to it when it comes up. I've bolded it, I've italicized it, but basically the 4 kinds of estranged labor, alienated labor, which is to say, there's a kind of labor that removes you from something. Well, what does it remove you from? What does it estrange you from? 4 things. The product of your labor. As a auto worker manufacturing Nissan vehicles in Aguascalientes, Mexico, you spend your whole life making Nissans, but you don't get to own a Nissan. So you are separated from the product of your labor, of your life activity, the product of your time energy. You don't even get to have it, but you spend your whole life making it. You think that little girl picking those coffee beans is going to get to have a $5 latte every day? No. But you're also estranged from your life activity itself, from being able to direct your life activity, to being able to choose the kinds of hardships you put yourself through, the challenges that you feel like motivate you. You don't get to do that either because the challenge that you're going to have to focus yourself on is your job. And then you're separated from what you can do with your life activity. And then you're separated from being able to have that life activity and that decision-making over that life activity with other people. So you're separated from one another. That's what he's getting at in this reading. And I think you'll enjoy it. If you read it, I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for kind of an overview.
All right, I hope that you got something out of that. I hope that what I've been doing here at Theory Underground with my fellow travelers, colleagues, and students here for the last couple of years is going to make a lot more sense in light of that conversation or that lecture. Also, stay tuned. The lecture that happened the day before, the one that goes more in depth into some of the history and development of some of these ideas, that's going to be coming out in a couple of days here. If you want access to all of the intro lectures that are very like these lectures, but more in depth, well, then consider becoming a subscriber to Theory Underground, specifically to the Snellgrove McKerracher Synthesis Seminar. There is a link in the description, whether this is on podcast or if you are watching this on YouTube. And by the way, right before I turn this over to the PSA with, at this point, you've probably heard the PSA if you've been around at all. But before I turn it over to the PSA, there is something that I do have to announce. It's brand new. It's really great. Thanks to some of the subscribers at Theory Underground, notably Will and Kier, Anne and I now have transcriptions of the seminars coming together. Transcriptions and audio for the seminars we've been doing in the background are available at our Substack, at the Theory Underground Substack. So that's a separate podcast. That's a separate channel. That's like a different thing. It's a different place. It's a different part of the internet. If you don't have the Substack app on your phone, you should, because it's better than any other social media site. It's one that will encourage you to write and think outside the box. And ultimately, it's a great place to keep up with Theory Underground's publishing. And now it's a great place to get audio transcriptions and transcriptions of the critical doxology and critical media theory and critical social theory lectures and seminar sessions that I've been doing with Anne and the gang at the TU Subscriber Hub. All right, so thank you, everybody. Make sure to check the link in the description, and peace.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of letting others read and think on their behalf, slipstreaming our way into an understanding of the situation that short-circuits the deadlocks of our moment.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation: theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is coming to a city near you. What that has meant in the last year is traveling across the United States, into Canada, and then all over Europe to promote our books, courses, and ideas related to time energy and underground theory. You've been reading Underground Theory.
I'm a publisher and an editor. I run and review books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best edited collection I've ever read.
Okay, picture this scene. America, early 2021. An Amazon warehouse worker arises from the emerging underground theory internet scene to create spaces for untimely topics and concerns that are too often neglected or kept in isolation today. Joined by a revolving cast of underground theorists, academics, and critics, he establishes what will become Theory Underground, a teaching, research, and publishing platform by and for working-class intellectuals, autodidacts, and academics who want to do more than they're able to do within the confines of academia. That warehouse worker's name is David McKerracher, and his book Timenergy is his first major contribution to the world of theory. It was recently reprinted with a foreword by none other than Slavoj Žižek, who also contributed to Theory Underground's latest book.
My Bible, it's an excellent book.
A collection of essays called Underground Theory.
What you just heard is an excerpt from the Strange Exiles podcast, episode 23, where Bram from Strange Exiles interviewed me and Mikey. For those who don't know, Mikey is the author of the Dangerous Maybe blog. We are publishing one of his books here shortly at Theory Underground. He's also a lecturer at Theory Underground, and he's someone I've been friends and a collaborator with for over 10 years. But most importantly for you all, he's a fantastic lecturer, and it's a crime that he has to do wage labor right now. One of the long-term goals of Theory Underground has been now for a couple of years to hashtag free Mikey. That is something that I've been really pushing, but first I had to get freed from wage labor, which was achieved this year. That's right. Thanks to my monthly seminar subscribers, I was able to quit Amazon and do Theory Underground full time. Now I'm announcing the next big phase of the plan, which is the Mikey Down Seminar. What monthly subscribers to the Mikey Seminar are paying for is a survey of philosophy, including deep dives into Žižek, Land, Lacan, Baudrillard, Bataille, Lyotard, and ultimately the whole history of philosophy.
We're trying to build like this ongoing seminar, right? And that's what I really like about this thing, where, you know, if I'm teaching a main text, that's something I got to focus on. I got to really, but the seminar thing, we can do this stuff all the time, where we dive deeper into concepts, we dive deeper into certain, you know, sections of books or whatever, and we can really do this nuanced stuff.
I think that there's probably no better way for us to accelerate our learning in these areas than by slipstreaming Mikey. And that has been my belief for years and years and years now. It's official. You're able to help out. You're able to get involved. You're able to benefit directly from liberating him from wage labor. Get on it right now. Do it. Just go. Stop what you're doing. Go click the button, subscribe. This is what you do. Subscribe to him. If you're already signed up for the ongoing Theory Underground seminars, then that's the ones that I do with my wife, Anne. Though that's getting an upgrade, which means that I will be doing one session per month that is just me, and then I will also be doing the ones with Anne, which are a crash course in sociology, anthropology, the social sciences, and ultimately Marx, Heidegger, Levinas, Bourdieu, imminently critiquing pop psychology, sociology, self-help, and ultimately the doxa of our time. But if you would like to be a subscriber to both Mikey's seminar and the seminar that the Snellgrove McKerrachers are doing, then the best way is to become a Tier 4 subscriber, or you can be a Tier 2 subscriber to each of us. The reason this matters is because Tier 2 is like pretty much the best bang for your buck. It gives you huge discounts on all of the courses that we do. But if you can't afford it, Tier 4 is amazing because it gives you Tier 3 access at both Mikey's seminar and ours.
And finally, not everybody has time to be part of these ongoing research seminars, and they just want to fund the paid content for the YouTube and podcast. And so thank you so much to our patrons over at Patreon. They're the ones funding all the free stuff. So big thank you to Bert, Marilyn, Carl, Sahil, Zozandra, Nikolai, Darian, Tyler, and Mandeep, and all the other wonderful patron people, Patreon people. And thank you to all the other wonderful Patreon people. Thank you so much to all of you patrons, and also to the special subscribers and the paying subscribers. Oh my god, it's just so awkward. Thank you, patrons. Okay. And to all the other wonderful patrons, thank you so much, all you patrons. And also a special thanks to the subscribers on the YouTube side, as well as the paying subscribers over at Substack. Why can't we do this? Fuck. You guys,
Please.
just thank you. Thank you, everyone, for making this bullshit possible. Thank you to the subscribers. You do it. You did so good. Thanks, guys.